Hey guys, welcome to a TwoSet school video. Today we're going to make a video called Top 10 Reasons Why Your Tone Might Suck. So let's get straight into it. So the first problem that we may encounter is not correctly hearing or diagnosing the tone. So to explain a little bit, basically, you can think of every note on the violin as having an optimum kind of resonance that can be produced by a specific balance between bow speed, bow weight, and contact point. Okay, so they are the three major variables that come into play when making a good tone. The bow tilt of your hair also matters, but that is more a secondary factor. Now, depending on how you balance these variables, you can either get a good sound or a sound that is too pressed or a sound that is too scratchy. Okay, so to demonstrate these, we'll have Brett talk about it.
The first one is a good tone. The first one is the good tone. The good tone. The scratchy or wispy tone. The pressed tone. Now you have your juice.
Alright, cool. So as you can see, when the tone is too pressed, basically it means one of the following. Your bow speed is too slow for the weight and contact point you're using. Your pressure is too much for the speed or contact point you're using. Or your contact point is too close to the fingerboard for the speed and weight you're using. The second reason why we may not have the tone that we would like is because we're listening too much for the fundamental tone itself, so the actual pitch, and our ears aren't focusing on the resonance of the instrument. So to illustrate this point, you want to understand that the violin is basically like a sound box. The string vibrates kind of left and right. The oscillations transmit to the bridge, and the bridge transmits it into the violin with the sound post, which vibrates the air inside. So that's kind of a really major point that many people miss out on, is that training your ears is pretty much 50% of the battle done when it comes to producing good tone, because being able to hear the resonance means that you're able to understand much more quickly whether you're overpressing, underpressing, and then you can adapt quicker, as opposed to if you can't really hear in your head the tone that you want, or you can't really tell from the violin if you're making a resonant tone or just a kind of a tone that doesn't really project, then you're going to struggle a bit trying to make a beautiful tone. The reason why resonance is really important, and I'll go into this further in a sec, is that the resonance is actually what helps your violin project. Okay, so what often happens is we think we want to play loud and project into a hall, and so we just press harder, and under our ears it sounds louder, like, but that kind of hard sound doesn't have the resonance or the overtones that will carry the tone out into a hall. Conversely, making a really beautiful resonant tone, it won't be as hard, and it might even sound softer under your ears, but this is a type of tone that carries all the way to the end of the hall. So if you're struggling to hear the resonance, what could be helpful in the beginning is to look at the vibration of your string. If it's resonating as at a kind of optimal state, your string will vibrate left and right, kind of around here. It's probably hard to show on video, but you want to get this vibration as wide as possible. Another cool way to check is if you play a note that is like kind of parasympathetic to an open string, then you are actually induce the open string to vibrate as well. So for example, if I play A on the D string, if I have a good tone, the A string should start vibrating as well, like naturally, just like magic, like Harry Potter.
The third reason is intonation. Now with intonation, when you play in tune, the violin or any string instruments will naturally carry the sound further. So as Eddie was pointing out, the nature of the violin sound traveling further through the overtones rather than pressing harder. Pressing harder or pressing lighter can also affect intonation, but that's another story. A good way to check intonation is to have the tuner. Another great way to check your intonation is to use your ears to check through open strings and any other notes that you can find that are related to the same key. So we have transition.
Okay, so there you go, that's in tune. If I played the D, you can hear my violin resonate much better because it's in tune with itself. But if I played it slightly sharper, already the tone is a kind of bit more hard and dry.
The fourth reason why you might not have a great tone is not having a straight bow. Now why is that? Because the contact point of the bow is very important in relation to the fingerboard and the bridge. Eddie has explained how the vibrations work. Looks like a cellist. Can you guys see? When you go closer to the fingerboard, the sound will change. When you go closer to the bridge, the sound will also change. The reason why a straight bow is so important is because it makes the tone even. What you may have is what we call the gliding bow. An example is like this. Let's say I start near the bridge. Notice how I moved my bow away from the bridge and the tone kind of fizzled away. Now if we start from the fingerboard, near the fingerboard, the same thing happens. So when you have a straight bow, God, this better be straight. The tone is more consistent. I'll also fix my intonation just so you know. Just to clarify, a straight bow means that the bow should be moving parallel to the bridge. Is this right? Crap. There you go. I can't tell. A straight bow is for a healthy ear. A straight bow is like your vitamins for your ear.
Don't be a pirate when you bow. So make sure you practice in front of a mirror. One thing that you might want to keep in mind when thinking about bowing straight is that the motion required in the lower half and the upper half of the bow will be different. Because the nature of our human body is we have joints, and each one of our joints traces a circular arc. So it is not actually natural for us to automatically bow straight. So instead, what you have to do is you have to make sure that in the lower half of your bow, you are using mainly your upper arm. So kind of bowing from the elbow. Now when you get to around the middle, and it's different for everyone depending on, you know, the body type, the length of the arms, but you get to a stage where you make kind of a square with your bow and the violin and your arms. And from this point, the bow begins to move through the opening of your forearm. So the big mistake people do is that they continue to use the upper arm, which makes that. But instead, if you reach that middle square point and instead you start opening your forearm, this is what happens. Now, it's still crooked though, so what do? We move our forearm and push it forward. So then this happens. Back here, and then in with the forearm. So really making sure that you know when to transition into a forearm opening and pushing forward as opposed to kind of continue doing that.
So an extra tip that might help you to keep a straight bow is to lean against the wall fully, turn it slightly a little bit. So lean at a 45-degree angle to the wall. So I guess your shoulders is leaning against the wall. Start the bow from the frog. Now notice when my elbow touches the wall. Voila. Now I'm forced to open my arms from my elbows, which will keep the bow straight. There you go. That's it. Now when you come back, same thing. Move as far as you can, then use your arm to carry the bow through the rest of the...
The fifth reason why your tone might sound like
shit
is that your tone is not consistent or even enough. So something that also often occurs is that we might get a good tone only in a small duration of our entire bow stroke instead of having it throughout the entire way. Things that could happen, for example, are having your bow jitter, or bow that kind of is speeding up or slowing down uncontrollably, or a bow that kind of loses its intensity and volume. Especially a common thing that happens is that because the bow is naturally much heavier at the frog than the tip, what we have to do as violinists is to be able to grade the pressure by pronating our forearm, so that as we get to the tip, we add more weight to compensate, and as we get to the frog, we lighten up. This kind of pronation feeling is almost like turning a key in a lock. So as you go towards the tip, you want to pronate. If I don't pronate, this happens. It gets weaker towards the tip. Another common problem with evenness is that the bow might be shaking, so that you kind of want to iron out the bumps so it is as even and smooth as possible, because that will make a really beautiful tone. And that also applies to legato. So sometimes if we're playing a legato passage, you have to make sure that even though your left hand is active, your bow is still even. A quick way to check that is to just play an open string but finger the adjacent string and make sure you're not doing. But
the sixth reason why you may not have a good tone is unnecessary tension. Now, let's admit it, the violin playing or any type of string playing, it's quite an unusual posture for the human body. And so naturally we will be inclined to tense. Get your friends or anyone that's never played an instrument, let them hold the bow. Show them how to hold the bow, let them hold the bow, and you'll see how much they're tensing. That makes sense, it's totally fine. But as a violinist or any string player, to make a nice tone, we have to identify. That sounds so Asian. To make a nice tone, we have to identify where the tension is happening. Now, this can happen in both the right hand or the left hand because they both affect the tone. A great way to identify your tension is to play a simple stroke on a simple note that you're comfortable with, let's say an open A string. And while you're playing the open A string, shift your awareness away from the A string to your body, to your right hand and the left hand. Now you might notice tension might occur on the fingers, might occur on the wrist, might be in the elbows, which is why sometimes people lock in the elbows from the previous step that was mentioned. Or could be in the shoulders, or could be in your butt cheeks, you never know. They all affect your tone, I'm not kidding. Now it could also be in the left hand, so also pay attention to the left side of your body. To sum it up, breathe and shift your awareness to your body.
So the next mistake when it comes to making a good tone when playing is failing to take into account of acoustics. Now, to illustrate this point, I decided to record this segment in a basement because of the different acoustics. Just kidding, I actually just forgot to record this segment, so I'm putting it in now. But anyway, the point is, a lot of the time we practice in only a certain type of acoustic. So maybe some people like to practice in a stairwell where it's really boomy, or in a practice room that's very, very dry. And they don't realize that in a concert hall, the acoustic is very different, and different concert halls will have a different effect on the sound. So what do I mean? Some things you need to take into account are how echoey the hall is. If it's very echoey, you need more articulation, and perhaps even playing very fast semiquaver passages a bit slower. On the other hand, if you're in a very dry acoustic, then producing really good resonance is of utmost importance. Something else is to realize that if you're having the rehearsal in the hall on the morning when there's no audience, it will still have a very different sound than when there's an audience in the hall, because all the bodies in the hall will actually soak up a lot of the sound. So you have to understand these things and be ready to adapt in the hall. And of course this will come with experience, but yeah, make sure you're listening out constantly to know how your sound is bouncing off the room and get the feedback. Problem number 7, this is a huge misconception, that beautiful tone comes from beautiful vibrato. Now, I can tell you, a beautiful vibrato, yes, it is going to make your playing unique and very beautiful, but if your tone is crap without vibrato, adding vibrato, no matter how beautiful, will still sound crap, because that's like putting makeup over an ugly tone. Using vibrato to cover up bad tone is like just putting a lot of makeup over an ugly tone. It's not going to work, and it's obvious. So what needs to happen is you need to make sure you can create a beautiful tone without vibrato, and then you need to find a vibrato that fits in with the type of tone color you're producing with your bow. Ideally, I mean, people have different philosophies with this, but in a general sense, you want your basic vibrato to kind of sound within your tone. So if you have, for example, something like this, where I have a tone but completely unmatching vibrato, the vibrato will sound on top of the tone rather than in the tone. So something like, it's too wide and too fast for the type of bow speed and pressure I'm using. Whereas if I use something more like, and notice when I go closer to the bridge and heavier, that warrants a wider and slower vibrato. Basically, you have to learn to match your vibrato with your tone, and also understand that the tone must come first. If you don't have a consistent tone, the vibrato will not make it sound better.
It's like adding a lot of chocolate sauce on a cake made out of vomit. The second last reason why your tone might sound like vomit is to not put a lot of chocolate sauce on there, because people won't come back. But to make sure your coordination between your left hand and right hand are on point. Now, yes, you might ask, but what do you mean? I don't know. Your left hand vibrato, your left hand placement of all your notes could be correct. Your right hand could be moving at a right speed and placed at the right contact point and doing the right string crossings. But if they're not working together, it's never going to happen.
So basically, to add on to that, the things you want to look out for is to make sure your left hand is actually down before the bow plays. Yes, the left actually comes slightly before the right hand. Why? Because if you execute the movement simultaneously, your finger actually requires a split second before it fully depresses the string. And if your bow starts playing while your left hand hasn't pressed the string fully, that happens. The first split second of the note will not speak well. Similarly, the same thing happens with preparing for string crossings. You want to be on the new string level before you start bowing it. So a good way to think about this is by the end of the old note, you're already on the new string level. So I'm already there. As opposed to and then doing the string crossing after you started the note, like
attention.
And when it's string crossing and left hand, that's even more to look out for. So if you're doing a string crossing with the left hand, you basically want to think of it as a double stop almost. So your new finger is already down, ready to go. That will help your clarity and clean up a lot of the kind of dirt in between the notes, if you will. The last problem is failing to respond, so unresponsive bowing. What do I mean by that? The violin, in its infinite glory, has 4 strings, G, D, A, E, and each has a different thickness, different personality, different... I can't think of anything. Anyway, so playing on the G string will require a different contact, weight, and speed as opposed to playing on an E string. The same applies to where you're on the fingerboard, because the higher you press on the fingerboard, the shorter the string length that is vibrating, and the shorter the string length, the different type of contact is required. So basically, understand this. As a basic guide, on the G string, you want to be slightly further from the bridge, and on the E string, you want to be slightly closer to the bridge. That is why if you're doing a 4-note chord, often you want to start further and come in. Similarly, as you go higher up, because the string is shorter, it can withstand less weight. So you also want to be pressing less as you go up. And you also want to be moving the contact point closer to the bridge, so the ratio from the finger to the bow to the bridge is the same, if that makes sense. Like whoop, 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 whoop. Okay? Going towards the E string or going up the fingerboard requires playing closer to the bridge or playing lighter. Being on the G string or down in first position or open string requires heavier, slightly heavier, and further from the bridge.
Thank you guys for watching. We hope you've enjoyed the 10 reasons why we think you might have a shitty tone. But that's okay. There are 10 reasons. Go through all of them. If you've done everything and you still can't find a way, message us and we will find a solution for you.
Cool. Just 2 bonus pointers that you might want to think about. Number 1 is once you have a good tone, you might want to explore tonal variety, so different tone colors, being able to change from different contact points and bow speeds, whatnot. You might also, if you really need to or want to, buy a better instrument. That also helps a lot because there's only so much you can achieve with a $10 violin.
$10 violin.
If that even exists.
Obviously a better instrument and a better bow will give you a better tone. But explore these colors and see what you can do with your instrument first, because then when you can play or when you can execute, let's say, all these techniques, then your tone will be magnificent.
Is that, I'm pretty sure me playing on the Stradivari will still sound worse than Kavakos playing on a $10 Chinese factory violin.
There you go, it's true. Actually, one insight is I've talked to a few violinists, I've talked to a few amazing violinists, and they say having a shitty instrument, you can still execute what you want, but you're going to have to work much, much more harder. But saying that, you can still do it, okay? A better instrument only makes it easier, but learn to do it on a shitty instrument first, and guess what?
Possibilities are endless. So make sure if you're having problems with tone, just practice maybe 5 minutes a day, some open strings, slow bow, that's very, very important. We'll have an exercise linking to different ways you can practice some bow exercises that will help your tone. And also realize that if you're performing, don't try to overanalyze and just be in the moment and have fun.
Good luck, guys. Don't forget to subscribe, and we have a lot more coming for you guys. We hope this helps. Comment below and tell us what you think and how it went. See ya! Peace.
Yo!